it to day 4. Again, we are going back to revisit these 3 words: pessimistic, optimistic, and ambition. So just as a reminder, pessimistic refers to expecting the worst thing to happen. We know that optimistic and pessimistic are antonyms, therefore optimistic means that you are expecting the best thing to happen. We also learned that ambition is a strong desire to do or achieve something, kind of like a goal. So now let's play a game. What might you say or do? Let's take a look at the first example. You are about to run a race. You are feeling pessimistic about your chances of winning. What might you say if you were feeling pessimistic about your chances of winning the race? And why? If you have someone next to you, you can turn and talk or think to yourself. Right, if I were feeling pessimistic about my chances of winning in a race, then I might say to myself, hey, you can do this. You've been working so hard and you've been practicing. Just try your very best. Why do you think someone might feel pessimistic about his or her chances of winning a race? If you have someone next to you, you can turn and talk or think to yourself. You can use this sentence frame to complete your thought. So let's discuss this example for just a moment. I know that many of you probably play sports, right? So I tried to apply this to maybe a personal experience, maybe not about winning a race, but I know that in playing softball and other sports, there are times when I felt pessimistic about my chance. I know that in softball, I got up against one of the best pitchers in the league, and I felt a little bit pessimistic, kind of like, oh gosh, I know I'm just going to strike out. I'm going to strike out, I'm not going to hit the ball, and I'm going to be that person that loses our chance of winning. So I think that sometimes this is just very natural for this to happen, to feel pessimistic. It kind of has a negative, what we say, connotation, so it kind of sounds like a negative word, but sometimes it can just be a very natural and normal feeling to have. Maybe this young man felt very pessimistic about his chances of winning the race because perhaps he saw some of his competition and he felt a little bit intimidated. I know we've heard that word before. Let's take a look at another example, this time using and referring to that word optimism. So let's look at this sample here. You are about to take a math test. You are feeling optimistic about how you will do. What might you say if you were feeling optimistic about how you will do on the test, and why? So meaning, what are some things that you might be saying to yourself or that you might be thinking to yourself when you're feeling very optimistic about this math test? If you have someone next to you, you can turn and talk or think to yourself. So if you're about to take a math test and you're feeling very optimistic, you probably aren't saying things like, oh gee golly, I'm not going to do very well, what if I fail? You're probably saying things like, I'm going to get an A on this test, I've got it. This looks really easy. Hey, I know this stuff. Why might someone feel optimistic about how they will do on a test? Again, if you have someone next to you, you can turn and talk or think to yourself. Someone might be feeling very optimistic because maybe they studied. Maybe they just really paid attention in class while the teacher was covering the material, so they feel very good and very positive about what they're about to do on their test. Let's look at the last example. Your ambition is to become a famous author and illustrator of children's books. What might you do to prepare now if your ambition were to become a writer and illustrator of children's books? If you have someone next to you, you can turn and talk or think to yourself. So your answer might be very different from Mrs. Body's, but for me, I would assume that if your ambition is to become an author and an illustrator, then even now when you are younger, you might start to write and illustrate some of your own stories. So just to practice. So that leads us to the last part of day 4, our color words. So I know that in the directions it says to watch day 4's vocab video and then, sorry about that, and then to study those vocabulary words since you do have a quiz today. What I'd like you to do is complete those color words for the words pessimistic, optimistic, and ambition. So what word comes to mind, or what color rather, when you think of the word and the meaning of pessimistic? I don't know about you, but I think of kind of darker colors, and then when I think of optimistic, I think like bright and cheery, like yellows and bright greens, but that's just me. And then what color comes to mind when you think of the word ambition? So you'll upload those today before you complete your vocabulary quiz, and that wraps up